Hi, good afternoon. It's Jim from maverickstar Observatory. A couple of things I wanted to talk to you about, which are very important, based on one of the comments that was made in yesterday's video, which I thought was commonly accepted now about all what's been going on about pole shift news, but apparently some people aren't completely clear on some of the risks that we got probably coming our way and could come our way in around 17 months. If my theory is correct on how poles react with regards to weak and strong field lines, and I think it's based on good science, and I'm 80% confident, maybe 90% confident that might be the case. We are going to start to see some dramatic changes perhaps before 17 months from now. So before we get into that, I want to just say big thanks to those people that are making a little bit more of an effort to support what we do here at the observatory. And we've got that timeline now of January where we've got to try and do something about the observatory deficit, or we've got to make some really difficult decisions as to where we go from January onwards. We can't run up any more deficit. I said that I was prepared to set aside for the next 3 months another £3,000 of my own money, and that is it. There will be no more coming out of my own pocket for it. It is time that we all started to work together on this, and even more so now as we approach that 40-degree mark. Now, the comment that was made yesterday in the comment section was, there's no guarantee that the magnetosphere will come back up, and I thought that I'd made that clear. There is no guarantee that the magnetosphere would come back up after this reversal, and I've made it clear why that is the case, is that this magnetic reversal is not like any other magnetic reversal that we've seen take place on this planet in the history, or at least those lava flow recordings that give us the timelines as to when the poles have reversed and how long a period it took before the next reversal happened. I says it was almost, but not quite, like clockwork. On average it was 350,000 years or thereabouts that we go through a reversal. And a little bit later on in this video I'll show you the seafloor spreading, where we measured the time in between each reversal. The important thing to note is that we are 500,000 years overdue. We should have gone through the reversal 500,000 years ago, and that's why I say that this magnetic reversal is unlike any other. There is something definitely changed within our core of our planet for it to take another 500,000 years before it's gone through a completed reversal. So something is indicating that the core of our planet is slowing down. It hasn't solidified, it hasn't set, the magma in the core, and clearly we know that because we're still getting volcanic activity. But we are probably around 15-20% less on the volcanic activity than what we was probably 5 years ago. So you might see a lot in the media with regards to La Palma erupting. It seems to be taking the media attention at the moment, and they're recording a lot about it. And that doesn't mean that we're getting more volcanic eruptions around the world. We're actually getting less, by around 15-20%. So it is good on one hand. It means that we haven't got a solidified core, but it does mean on the other hand that something has definitely affected the cycles of magnetic reversals to the point where we're 500,000 years overdue. And does that mean when we do pass the 40-degree mark that I regularly show on Google Earth, which we're around 17 months away, when we do pass that, does that mean that the actual reversal will be slower as well? We just don't know. We know that it's in the last 5 months it has slightly increased in speed by around 20%. It's coincidental that all these things are by 20%, but that's just the way they are. And it could be synchronicity. There could be a link in all this. But we're making our best efforts to keep our eye on a lot of things. I mean, we have got some equipment in different parts of the world. You know, so we've got pretty much probably 60% of the main magnetic intensities around our world covered at this observatory. There is a couple more that we'd like to get. As I mentioned in the video yesterday, I'd like to get a magnetometer and a muon detector in Brazil to measure not just the depleting magnetic intensity there, but also to monitor the breaking of the South Atlantic anomaly, which is breaking away into two pieces. One piece is going over towards South Africa, and the main intensity still is in Brazil. So we'd like to get equipment out into those two regions, but more importantly, we would like to get one also in that epicenter in Russia, central Russia, where we know the magnetic pole is definitely on course for and hasn't deviated on that course for that position for the last at least 100 years. And last 30 years it showed an increase in speed over distance, where it covered around 1,200 miles, where previous to that it covered 500 miles in 90 years. And again, recently in the last 5 months we've seen that increase by about 20% in speed and covering more distance in that short space of time. So, you know, there are a lot of things that we're keeping an eye on here at the observatory. Not just the magnetic intensities, not just the magnetic pole migrating over the northern hemisphere. We're also interested as to what's happening right now as the magnetic North Pole travels over an active region, which is the North Atlantic Ridge. And, you know, for the last 5 months we've seen it entering over the North Atlantic Ridge, and as it did so it increased in speed. Now that could be because of that ridge, it could be just because, you know, things are getting close to that 40-degree mark. We're starting to see an acceleration. It really is more now than ever a time to be observing this. You know, if you was interested in geomagnetics, then this is really an exciting time, because there's a lot taking place, albeit these things are very big inertias, and, you know, to a lot of people it would seem like paint drying, and I've been accused of that a few times when, you know, I've discussed with people that, you know, we monitor it every 3 seconds, take a reading every 3 seconds, but, you know, this is the first time human beings have ever recorded a magnetic pole reversal taking place. And, you know, I thought then, if that is the case, we should do it at a respectful resolution. And, you know, for the last 3 years now we've been monitoring every 3 seconds, which is an amazing you know, resolution to monitor anything that really doesn't move that quick. In terms of months, you know, it moves probably 5 miles of migration towards Russia. So the main thing is here is what then, getting back to, you know, that comment that was placed there, what is the major concern then about it being overdue? Well, it doesn't give us any guarantees that it's going to reverse, for one, and it doesn't give us any guarantees that the magnetosphere, after it collapsed during that transition through the weak field lines where things get accelerated, that it will come back up. I would like to think it would, but there is that always at the back of my mind, that it has taken another 500,000 years to begin to go through a reversal. And we have had a lot of magnetic excursions as well over the last 45,000 years, which have been failed reversals. So the implications of our Earth losing its magnetosphere permanently would spell probably the end for all biodiversity on this planet, and that's why it is so much of concern to me, and it should be to everybody else. And, you know, it surprises me that we're in this process of this reversal, and what seems to be the focal point of attention is CO2 and global warming. And it's a bit of a shock when you consider the real consequences of a magnetic pole reversal and a delayed pole reversal, especially when you bring into the fact that we have seen and studied the effects of one of our neighbouring planets that lost it. And there is no guarantees, or there is nothing to say that, you know, the Earth could follow suit at some point in the fact that it loses its magnetosphere, then in turn loses the atmosphere, and then all the water on the surface of the planet. There would be no survival of such a situation, or even long term, because once radiation erosion has removed our atmosphere, there is no protection then from the water, not boiling off but evaporating off the planet and being lost in the same way as the atmosphere was. So we know that this has happened to one of our neighbouring planets. We know that we're going for a reversal, and therefore this is a serious event, and it should be considered that as well, because we just don't simply know the implications of a full reversal and the loss of a magnetosphere, even for a temporary period of time. What I have found strange over the last few days is the media talking about cancer rates going up, yet there has been no dialogue linking the increase in cosmic radiation, which I showed you in the video yesterday was absolutely happening. And like I say, there has been no connection drawn to that, or even asked, is this a possibility, with the increase in cosmic rays, could this be the reason why we're seeing an increase in cancer? It'd be interesting to have a look at the statistics on actual cardiac failure as well during this period of time, and whether over the last 15 years or 30 years we've seen a slow increase in cardiac arrhythmic failure over that period of time, as well as cancer increase rates. So there's the short-term serious aspects of this, but the long-term serious aspects of this is actually losing the magnetosphere, and it is not outruled at this point in time whether that will be the case. How long, if the magnetosphere didn't come back up, would it take to erode the atmosphere through solar radiation and intergalactic radiation, or galactic radiation? How long would it take to erode it? These are questions that we are trying to effort, and I suppose until we really start to see things happening fast, we'll probably at that point start to see some noticeable changes with the magnetometers that we've got out in the field. I'm just really shocked that there are so many billions of pounds, maybe even trillions of pounds being spent on CO2, yet very little money in this line of research, yet given its severeness of what it can do to our planet, and more so to all the biodiversity on it. I'm just shocked that there isn't more institutes doing more research on this. And what I would really like to see, if there was more, or if these mainstream organisations that are doing some research on it, is a little bit more clarity with their results that they find, their findings being shared with the general public, and shared honestly as well. So I'll find, before I end this video, I'll go over to the Screencatcher software and I'll find that chart that shows the average duration where the Earth has gone through reversals, and you'll see that there is a large black bar on that chart where that represents 780,000 years of non-reversal in that period of time, and you'll see how close they was to each other before that. So if nothing else, it should just give you some reference as to how the Earth used to behave with regards to pole shifts, and how it now has begun to behave with pole shifts. The only other thing to do is, and I really hate to mention it, guys, but you know, without the funding for what we do here, we simply can't do it. So you know, there is a link which I'll mention now down there in the description, and I just hope that a few more people are prepared, you know, to support us as we get closer to that critical mark, that 40-degree mark. And with that, I'll go and see if I can find that chart for you so you can have a quick look at that before we end the video. So on this chart we can see the Earth has gone through many magnetic reversals over 5 million years, but towards the top of the chart is the most recent time, and you can see 0.78. That is 780,000 years of a magnetic pole that has been in its position where it was 100 years ago over Canada. And you can also denote from that that is the biggest section of that whole chart. So this is the longest the Earth has ever gone through such a delay in magnetic reversals. You can also see that on average it was around about 350,000 years is the average time period for a reversal. And we are now in that period at the top of the chart, still now at this point going through a reversal. It's interesting when I say there's no recorded data other than what we see in the archaeology's records of these reversals. We take these from the sides of the Atlantic ridge as it spreads over. What happens is the lava comes out, the magnetite sets as it solidifies at the bottom of the ocean, and then through running you know, magnetic equipment over there, we can detect when the pole's reversed in that magnetite, or by taking you know, simply core samples and then checking with magnetometers when the pole's reversed through the samples. And we know through the rate at which it spreads, that gives us the time indication over that period. So you know, if the lava's flowing at a certain rate constantly for thousands of years, we can work out how many years ago it was before that last reversal. So we use charts like this to, you know, just briefly show people how fast the reversals have occurred over periods of time. And like I say, you can see that the bar at the top is the largest. So there you go. There is no guarantees that the magnetosphere will come back up after this time. There has been, you know, 780,000 years since the last reversal, and we are, on average, 500,000 years overdue another reversal. And I find it alarming that there is so much focus at this point in time on CO2 causing climate, and this has been derived from man actually putting too much CO2 into the atmosphere. And I've spent a lot of my time, you know, showing people the actual truth of the facts of CO2. You know, the truth is, if you combine all the CO2 in the atmosphere, it still amounts to 0.4% of the total gases that make up our atmosphere. There's way more oxygen. There's maybe, you know, as far as greenhouse gases are concerned, we should be concerned right now about one of the major greenhouse gases, which is never talked about, which is water vapour. H2O is a greenhouse gas. It's a tri-molecule, just like CO2, and behaves exactly the same when it comes and you know, it interacts with cosmic rays. It does the exact same thing. But no talk about these other gases which could cause greenhouse effects. You know, again, recently we've got them chasing their tails right now, because it's getting more difficult for them to carry on with this CO2 alarmism. For the fact is, now I think, you know, one of the big arguments now against CO2 causing all the problems is the fact that they've admitted that, you know, we are seeing more flood damage recently, and that they have said it's through global warming. You know, any climatologist would tell you that, you know, before any water starts to fall from the clouds, that warm, moist, humid air has to come into contact with something a lot cooler, And it should come as no surprise with the fragmented jet streams, which I've showed many times on this channel. You know, as soon as those Arctic jet streams come into contact with those subtropical ones, you get these flash floods occur. And yes, they do drop, you know, a lot more water, because the jet stream shouldn't be in the subtropical region to start with. And, you know, we're not hearing these things discussed like this, in this manner, by climatologists or mainstream media. You know, they are pushing the agenda because there is obviously now more money in CO2 than there has been in wars previously. It seems to be the bandwagon where all, you know, the people are that was involved in war theatres, creating wars on false pretenses. You know, they've moved and shifted over to CO2 now to make their money, because it is an endless supply of money, so long as you keep the general public oblivious to the truth and the facts. But if you're going to admit that the floods are on the increase, then you've got it completely wrong, because we're not looking at global warming anymore. We're looking at something completely opposite. Because first of all, if we're getting an increase in floods, we must be getting an increase in cool climates that are affecting those subtropical jet streams, and therefore it would be more accurate, I think you would agree with me, or more logical to say that it's caused through global cooling. And that shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone who's studied climatology, because they should know that we are due to go back into a glacial period, and we have already started to see, you know, global climate cool over the recent years, and we know that it peaks before it cools every time, and we know that CO2 is going to increase because temperature increases. It's not the other way round. The horse is not being pulled by the cart. The cart the horse pulls the cart. What they're saying is that CO2 drives temperatures on this planet, whereas it's completely wrong. Temperatures drive increases in CO2. And it should come as no surprise to a lot of people that if we are now at a peak where we are starting to go back down into lower temperatures, then it will only be a matter of time before CO2 starts to fall along with temperatures. And I've shown charts and these cycles over thousands of years, and it has been the case. You know, global temperature drives CO2 increases, and you know it should be. You know, I've tried to be as very layman's in the explanatory of this. I've even suggested people, you know, when they pull out a can of beer from the fridge and they pop the ring on it, it doesn't spill out as much as what it would do if it's at room temperature, or even warmer than room temperature. You would get a more, you'd get the gases come out more, and it's the same for the ocean. You know, when we get warmer climates, we have a little bit of a warm period, then obviously, you know, the CO2 is going to be released more from the oceans in gigatons than what we would ever put up there. I mean, when we're talking about the atmospheric content of CO2 in the atmosphere, that 0.4%, that is on a whole. That's your oceans, which puts out thousands more gigatons than what we do. When you look at how much exactly man puts out there, it's an insignificant amount, but they don't expect you to do the research. They don't expect you to monitor CO2 levels with your own CO2 detector equipment and purchase it, because most people haven't got the time or the inclination or the willingness to even do that. But you could very quickly and easily see through the lies if you did. And that's why we do it at our observatory, because it's very easy to disprove global warming through CO2. What's driving our climate now, I think, from the 10 years that I've been studying, you know, geomechanics and you know, the magnetic North Pole, I would say that there's been some shifts in the speed of the migration of the magnetic North Pole, which fall exactly in line with the shifts in changes in our climate. Yet nobody else seems to draw that line and conclusion, and even if they do and they're outspoken about it, you know, they get ridiculed for it. I'm really hoping that this will change, this nonsense will change, and the truth will prevail, for the sake of good science, for all the other scientists that have walked away from the field of science, climatology, geology, scientists across the range, because, you know, I know how they've been ridiculed and persecuted for speaking out against the masses. So, you know, we are not guaranteed that the magnetosphere will recover after this reversal, and we could simply end up looking like Mars did, or well, still does today. Yet we knew there was a different story in the history of Mars. It did have water on its surface, and did have it for thousands and thousands of years. You know, that's how the valleys got eroded and the terraform looks like it does today. It also had an atmosphere, which it no longer has. But coincidentally or synchronicity, it did have a magnetosphere, which it no longer has. And it did have active volcanoes, which it no longer has. So we're hoping that you will keep supporting our efforts here at the observatory, so that at least we can inform those people that are interested in knowing the truth in some of these aspects that we cover here at the observatory. And if you're one of those people that are interested enough to at least, you know, go that little bit further than, you know, thumbing up the video, which I really appreciate, and writing a comment in the comment section, you know, there is that link where you can help support our observatory, because it is, at the end of the day, publicly funded. And I think the only other thing to say here, guys, is we will be back tomorrow with something interesting to discuss on these matters. And until then, you know, take care of your loved ones. Links down below if you want to help support us, and also what I usually do. Bye for now.